I'm a teacher, physics teacher, and so I was wondering how I can manage that students do not watch demonstrations of experiments, but are getting more involved in doing experiments themselves. And so that was actually one of the key questions we had in mind. And then the physics app I will present later today, was kind of the answer to this. We can actually turn your phone into a true physics lab. We started this for one lecture, and then we put everything for free on Play Store and the App Store of Apple. And then we saw that actually the main people which are downloading it are actually teachers and school kids. And so when we saw that actually and then they were approaching us, and then people were starting to translate the app in other languages such that they can use it for their schools. Target group here are young kids. So kids when they still have time to play. So really when they get the first smartphone, that they can do also something else than just playing games or writing text messages, but they can also use the sensors of the phone to do physics experiments. And you see that I'm rotating around the x-axis. Now this here is around the z-axis. I think we should put much more funding into kindergartens and school teachers, and they are so important for the society. And so that's something where we are trying to help and to give them better instruments for improving teaching. Many of the global challenges, can only be addressed from a scientific point of view. And so I think scientific education is something our society should really pay much more attention to it. We should really look for platforms which help teachers for better education and then fund these platforms. And then we can kind of compensate this from giving a little bit more money to the individual schools. And I think in the end, there's a huge potential of kind of changing the way how the education system is funded. But I think policymakers and politicians are only at the beginning of really starting to realize these potentials.
I'm working for a market research company named Ipsos, and I have the pleasure to be here to introduce the work that I've been doing with Eric van Hippel from the MIT around the idea to use latest advancements in machine learning technique to discover user innovations as they arise very openly in the web, and utilizing the web as an ecosystem to discover and also diffuse. What we saw in this pilot that we executed in the area of kitesurfing is that really user communities with their passion in the sports itself develop a lot of innovations.
We discovered, we looked at the evolution, so the diffusion and velocity.
It's all about finding places where you can have very deep exchanges, and what we see today that this is not happening in the large social platforms that we all use in our day-to-day basis. So I think one key challenge that I do see is really to transform this maybe into the more public area of social mainstream platforms and really diffuse that in a better way. So to bring together your natural, really day-to-day behavior with places where you can collaborate with like-minded peers to develop innovations.
You could literally find the moment where somebody posted it in the first design on the web, and then other people contributing to it, posting better options for it.
The economy in kite surfing came in later, after the user communities developed their own equipment features. So only after the market or the sports discipline at a certain moment reached a maturity that was commercially attractive, companies came in to adopt the initial ideas and then evolved in the future. And today it's a big economy.
A potential producer or somebody who wants to participate in this innovation to prioritize and see how big that may become.
I think there is a mind shift going on right now where really companies rethink the way they innovate. And now with the over-availability of data and also technology, they see that it's way easier for consumers to organize themselves. If something is not fitting and I can't find a product that is perfectly matching the needs that I have, I could just go ahead and hack something. And we see that is happening all over the places. I think it's important for companies to look way closer into user needs and centricity of user needs. And for governments, it's also very interesting to look deeper into the area of household sector innovations and how they could probably solve society problems or humanitarian problems. There are obviously problems that require a lot of technical knowledge that not the majority has, but a few experts, they will have them, and they will also gather in some places using digital to interact and solve these. So I think the web is doing a great job for us because people talk about their problems, seek advice from each other, and we can just learn a lot from this tremendous data source. And just being on top of it and spending the time to truly understand what people are struggling with seems to me like the most obvious thing that you can do to solve these humanitarian problems.
I'm trying to start a new trend, which is around community-developed innovations for women's health. So even for women who don't have a diagnosed chronic disease, but who are dealing with preventive health issues, are innovating around pregnancy and parenting, and trying to manage their family life and their goals, as well as people who have been diagnosed with cancer. There's more interest in women and men who have been diagnosed with cancer across the EU and how we might integrate their patient innovations into the healthcare system. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to elicit patient innovations by survey, so that's why I circumnavigated the obstacle to find that machine learning is a really great way to process comments that patients are openly posting online. The digitalization is a way that we disseminate public health messages, but for me bringing in user innovation, it's trying to see digitalization of people's everyday biometrics and their perspectives on their health and how they improve their quality of life when facing different health conditions. That's all already online. So it's how do we tap into that as public health and innovation researchers. In the health context, we're hoping that there will be policies created when new healthcare administration systems are created so that they can have the expectation embedded that patient innovations are important to identify and money should go towards makerspaces in hospitals, and that politicians are campaigning for improvement of the quality of life and welfare of society by investing in health-related or other types of user innovations as a priority, especially as we go forward and are interested in more sustainable, low-cost solutions. The greatest challenges of our time are already being faced on a micro and macro level by us and people who are experiencing their everyday life, right? So all we have to do is look around and find the people who are thriving despite the early challenges of global warming, despite the early challenges or current and sometimes belated challenges of a faulty healthcare system. And there are many other challenges in terms of economy and such that we see being faced and navigated by user innovation. And it's just a matter of kind of focusing in on those and thinking about which ones we'd like to magnify at the policy level or at the programmatic level.
Most of my research is about trying to understand how the way that you break up a system design problem affects who can solve it. And that's how I wandered into this open and user innovation space. So I work a lot with NASA, and they've been very, very interested over the last 10 years of how they can use these different kinds of tools to get engagement broadly, but also potentially get really good ideas from outside of the traditional players. We presented one of the papers that we're looking at is looking at planetary defense, which is a pretty big problem. This is an extinction event from an asteroid, the same that happened to the dinosaurs. Could happen to us, and this is something that NASA's worried about right now, and we were looking to see what average citizens could contribute to that context, and we were pretty surprised at how they were changing some of the conversation about what systems we should build, and also the way that they could contribute to things like just even detecting when there's a threat. I look at NASA, I look at aerospace companies. These are traditional systems engineering organizations that are used to organizing around the kinds of knowledge that people are trained when they sort into these companies. And so they have project managers who are used to working with the normal players. But to do open in this space, it's not just instead of letting a normal contract to a big organization like Boeing, they have to really think differently about what the problem is, and they need to learn how to understand what their fundamental problem is and pose it in a way that's a little bit different, or maybe pose a different piece of it that really recognizes that if you're going to use the crowd for this kind of a thing, the crowd is, as Baldwin was saying in her keynote, it's a different kind of organization. And so the knowledge structures are different, so the organization structure should be different, and the scope of the problem should be different. And we don't really have expertise within the agencies right now to think about that question. NASA has been engaging on many fronts for a long time. Almost always have a contest open. For us, we did it through a platform called freelancer.com, which has 30 million active users, but they've done citizen forums, they do all kinds of hackathons, they release apps that people can just play, and they're contributing to things like light curve characterization, which is understanding how asteroids are spinning and what their characteristics are. And people can just play their games and do those kinds of things. So there's lots of different ways, and NASA's been engaging with all kinds of high school programs. But this is a way to get the public engaged again in what their mission is, what space exploration is all about. Get new ideas too, but both of those are important, and get people excited in STEM, which has probably even broader implications than even just capitalizing on what users in the crowd are already doing. We see that the people who participate in these NASA competitions, it really does change their outlook on what they might want to do with their careers. And so it's much more than just what NASA or these seekers can get, it's what the people who participate get out of it too.